Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the XSL One LM, which is in effect the Mark IV version of the XSL X-One, which is the set that I have here on the left hand side. Anyway, XSL grabbed everyone's attention last year with the X-One here. Because it was discovered that it was using the same driver as the Dark Magician, the MIM Dark Magician. That immediately made a few people want to try different tunings. Myself, Michael Bruce, trying to see if we could go and fetch that elusive Dark Magician tuning. And to a certain extent, yes, that has been obtained. But XSL themselves also, I guess, listened to what people were saying with regards to the original X-One and the way that it was tuned, and so also started to try and do improvements. The initial first set was, was very bass heavy. And that darkened up the whole sound, and it was an interesting sound, but it was just way too dark. They came out with the Mark II version, which is this one here, a couple of weeks later, which lowered the bass, and that helped significantly, but it also lowered slightly the mids and upper mids, and that all, although the problem in the second Mark II version was a significantly better sounding IM, this wasn't still the ideal tuning, at least in my opinion. They came out then with the Mark III, which also coincided with a different color for the shell, which basically the shell has always maintained itself the same. This one further lowered the bass, but it boosted the mids, upper mids, and treble, and this one, yes, this one had a more coherent, a more balanced, a more sensical kind of tuning. It still maintained a lot of that energy of the bass, which the Dark Magician driver is known for, because it is a very good driver. But it cleared up the mids, and it just became significantly more capable, especially with with female vocals and just instruments and detailed retrieval. It just became more capable. Enter now the Mark IV version, which they've basically, what they've done is they've modified the shell slightly so that it can now take these nozzles, and the nozzles, to a certain extent, and I'll show it to you in a second, what they do is they provide an earlier gain in terms of the pinna gain. It's slightly earlier, so it peaks earlier than before as compared to the previous models. But they effectively give you the ability to have the tunings of the previous models all in one. That's what basically they're doing. There's a blue, there's a silver, and there's a gold nozzle. The silver is the one that is the brightest sounding one with two peaks, which I'll show you in a second. The gold is slightly lowering those peaks and kind of becomes an in-between the Mark II and the Mark III version. And the blue is the one that has the least gain, and you can kind of say it kind of fetches inspiration on the original one. I've had this set now for a couple of weeks, to be honest. But just got caught up with other IMs to review and so on and so forth, and ended up not talking about it. I mean, to cut a long story short, the price has slowly crept up. It's now around $59 roughly, and when you consider that they've offered always a nice cable, it's a nicely built shell, fantastic driver, and now the nozzles and everything, you can't really complain. The value is there. That's undeniable. They've also improved before the IM, it used to come just with a carrying case. Now it actually comes with a little very basic packaging, but they've definitely done improvements. This is one very small brand that definitely has listened to what people say and has made concerted efforts to improve the product, and they're doing it. They've made it. And with the Mark IV, I think this is the one that makes the most sense. If you've never had an X-One and you're now looking for an X-One, this is the one that makes the most sense. You will get a flavor of all the previous ones in one single model. Now, having said that, if you have a Mark III, does it make sense to get this one? I've got it with the gold nozzle, which is the one that I like the most. If you have a Mark I, you can always retune it if you're capable enough, and then kind of get something which approximates either one of these two, and these two are in themselves very close to the Mark IV. But you know, let's assume that you don't want to retune, that you're not capable, you got two left hands, you're not good at doing that. If you've got the Mark 1, this is definitely a better option. If you've got the Mark 2, this is definitely an upgrade, without a question. If you've got a Mark 3, I would say that this is about the same. It's not really an improvement, because two of the tunings that it offers are going to be tunings which are reminiscent of these ones, like I just mentioned, and only one of the tuning nozzles will give you a sound which is very similar to this one. So if you have a Mark 3, should you upgrade to Mark 4? In all honesty, no. If you don't have any of them, then this is the one to go for, without question. I'm not going to sit here and explain a lot about the sound, because I think most of us by now already know. But the bass in the X1 is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It's got a nice, clean, powerful, deep bass. Great for genres like rock and EDM and pop. Really good. The bass has no issues. The mids as well, really well executed, male and female vocals, especially these latest tuned ones, which have a little bit more air, a little bit more detail, or more balanced, more not as dark sounding. If there's any sort of maybe criticism that you can point out, is that okay, there could have been a little bit more twinklies and sparklies up top, but honestly, either in the Mark III or then in this Mark IV version with the particular nozzle that I'm using, which is the gold nozzle, I think that's been well obtained. The only reason why I didn't like the silver nozzle was because of this earlier pina that it has, and this peak. It touches up there on a frequency that can sometimes on certain music, for me, get a little bit too much. That's all. That's why I preferred the slightly tamer gold nozzle. Okay. The only real problem here, because in itself, like I said already, the X1 is a very good IEM, so it's capable in terms of its sound. Technically, it's also more than capable, more than adequate for its price. If there's only a nitpick, is like I mentioned, maybe a little bit more detailed, which would have been nice, but not a real issue. The only real major problem that the X1 has is obviously it's inserted in this price bracket, which is so competitive, and especially because we have an IEM in that price, which is the Delci from Keyfine. And here lies the X1's Mark IV's biggest obstacle. If you have a Delci, it doesn't make sense to get this. If you want to get this for the sake of getting it, because it's something that has evolved and it's a Dark Magician driver and so on and so forth, they're fine. Okay, I guess that's a valid reason. But if you have a Delci, then this doesn't make sense to get. The Delci is by the nature of its driver, to a certain extent, I guess, but I think more by the nature of the actual way the driver sits inside the shell, because that's I think is maybe the biggest obstacle here in the one. It just offers that little extra amount of detail in the upper mids and treble and extension and air that the X1 is not capable of doing, at least in this shell. In this particular shell, the X1 is limited to how far it can actually go up top in the upper frequencies because of that. I'm going to say that the driver quality on either one of them is about the same. Although I would think, this is maybe just me now, I would think the driver of the Delci is maybe just a little bit more capable. But that aside, I think the biggest differentiating factor here between these two is more the fact that the driver here is in a shell which has been more adequately designed for it, while here this shell is kind of a more generic shell. I mean, this shell reminds me of some stuff from it's the SG03, SG01s, forget the name, Richo. So that's, I think, it's its biggest problem. When I compared the X1 with the gold nozzle with the Delci, I was just having that little amount of extra detail that I wanted on here. I was getting it there. That's in essence the difference. Okay. Other than that, honestly, really good. I mean, I can't. It's a good IM. Period. It plays well, and it's the one that makes the most sense in this whole evolution of the one. Okay. Anyway, show you now the graphs quickly. Hi guys, okay, welcome now to the graph section here for the X1. This is the original X1. As you can see, monstrous amounts of bass. I mean, we were talking about, let me just lower this here a little bit more. We were talking about, again, oh my, let me bring it here, please. Sorry guys, there we go. We're talking about, again, into the bass of roughly 13 dBs, again into the mids of about 8.5, which is pretty decent. So the issue wasn't so much here, although you have this dip here, but that's not really the biggest problem. The problem was you had this massive amount of bass, which just, you know, made the sound way too bass heavy, and it was just not a pleasant sound, at least in the long run. Okay, so then they came out with the Mark II. Let me just make this color a little bit more visible. I think this will help. Let's see. So then they came out with the Mark II, which, yes, they significantly lowered the bass. Everything now sat within a window of, in terms of the bass, we're talking about a bass gain of about 8.5 dBs, a gain into the mids of about 8.5. But this balance, although graphically it looked good and so on, it still made the sound a little bit on the darker side, because you also lost a little bit of energy here in the upper mids and treble. And I think this loss of energy here was what actually dictated that it sounded just a little bit darker. Better than the original, but still not ideal. Then they came out with the Mark III, which is this one, and the Mark III was for me the best. The bass was just slightly lowered, while they actually increased the energy here of the upper mids and the treble, and they also made the peak just a little bit more front. If the peak before was at around 2.2, 2.3, it now became like 2.3, 2.4, just slightly ahead, gave it a little bit more energy than the original one. So if I take away quickly the Mark II, sorry, if you can see the energy of the Mark III and the Mark I is about the same in the mids, but with that energy here in the bass significantly lowered. So they kind of, this was the best balance. We had a bass gain of about 6-7 dBs, gain into a pinna gain of about 9. Perfect. It sounded, the Mark III sounded truly good. Enter now the Mark IV. So now the Mark IV, you have the 3 versions with the 3 nozzles. Okay, we have the silver nozzle, the gold, and the blue. We'll start with the blue here, which is this one here. So this is the blue. This gives us a tendency or a sound which is going to be similar more to the original one, as you can see, more bass heavy, with with a drop there in terms of the upper mids and the treble, so more darker sounding. Then you have the gold nozzle, here we go, which basically maintains the bass the same, just gives it a smidge more energy here. Okay, and then you have the silver nozzle, which again the bass stays basically the same, and it still increases a little bit more the energy here in this, just around 2K and around 4K, just increases it slightly. Now this third nozzle, for me, it wasn't a lot. It was just very few times that it actually occurred that it just made it a little bit too intense for me. But taking away now, the blue, so the blue doesn't make sense. If you look at these two, so the gold and the silver, which will probably be the ones that most of you guys will be using, this kind of is very reminiscent of the second version in terms of the bass. As you can see, the bass is very much a second version's bass. Just a little bit extra energy over. Okay, so this bottom one, let me just change the color so you guys can. Okay, this in black is the Mark II. The brown just above it is the gold nozzle, and the green is the silver nozzle. Or then if you use the Mark III, that's the Mark III. I think the Mark III and the silver nozzle, although graphically, let me just take away the gold one. Okay, the red line is the Mark III. The brown line is the Mark IV with the gold nozzle, which is the one that I used. These two are the ones that sound the most similar, and it's actually quite interesting that that's the case, because you see that the Mark III has got definitely more energy in them, upper mids and treble, definitely. But when at least when I was hearing the majority of the stuff that I was hearing, I wasn't noticing it that much. And the little bit of detail retrieval that I did lose on one to the other, I gained, or I got in return, a tonality which was just a little bit more realistic. Okay, timbre and tonality has always been one thing that, yes, the X1 has done very well. Even when it was two bass heavy, it was always very nicely executed because of the fact that the driver is a good driver with a very high magnetic flux, and that does convey that control on the driver that will ultimately then dictate that the timbre and the tonality will be as accurate as possible. There's no slugginess, no nothing. Okay, but Mark III versus the Mark IV with this silver nozzle, for me, is the closest that I was able to get them, and the one that for me makes the most sense. Obviously, that's me. I mean, you guys are different, and maybe you'll prefer it with the silver nozzle. Maybe you'll prefer it like this. Who knows? The gold nozzle, it just sounded spot on for me. As I was saying, the biggest issue here really is that we have this IEM, which is the Delci, and this IEM is a little bit like I've said a few times with regards to some IEMs. It is a little bit of a market disruptor because it is very well tuned and priced at a value that you just wouldn't expect. And up to now you kind of had the 500, the 500 LM, maybe the HE10, a little bit. That was that. You also had the R2, but you didn't have an enormous or limitless amount of IEMs that really conveyed various aspects of the sound, price, performance, sound, and the Delci does it spot on. And when you compare it to the X1 with the gold nozzle, let me just make the gold here in red. Okay, so this is the X1 with the gold nozzle. And, how can I explain this? You would think by looking at it straight away that, oh my God, this has got so much more bass, it's going to be muddy. It's got no. The way that the bass on the Delci is done and how it interacts or how it combines with the amount of upper mids and treble that it has is so well done. But it's so well done that it sounds very balanced. It doesn't. For me, it never came across. I heard some people saying that, but it never came across as being dark or being V-shaped or being anything. No, it just sounds very balanced and very smooth. If you look carefully, I mean, I've normalized everything at 1K, but even if I was to normalize it at 500 hertz, you would still see that balance that I'm talking about is still very much maintained. Let me just match it here at 500 hertz. Everything is just very, very balanced. While, for example, yes, you have an earlier Pina gain on the X1, which will make vocals a little bit more forward. It also then drops off and loses significantly more energy in the upper mids and treble as compared to the Delci. So the Delci has that little extra amount of detail, that little extra amount of twinklies and sparkles. Delci also has more information past 10K, and the amount of extra bass that it's giving, because it's located where it is significant. I mean, the biggest difference here will be from 60 hertz and down, but because that energy down there is not as prominent as you sometimes would think in a lot of music, it just makes for that overall balance to be very, very agreeable. It's very easy to listen to the Delci and not go, not come away saying, wow, this plays well. And that's the X1's biggest problem. The X1 also plays fantastically well. It's got a slightly different tuning, but it's been spotlessly well done. And it will ultimately be what is your pick, what is the choice, what is your preference. And short of not being able to listen to them, if you are living in a place of the world that you will not have access to them, you'll have to buy one and the other, listen to them, see which one you like, and then sell the one you don't like. And it's complicated because we don't have limitless funds. We don't have money to just let me just go spend and see what but that's that, guys. I hope I was able to shed some light here on the Mark IV from X1, the best of the X1 so far, without doubt. And let's see what they have in store for us next. All right, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions you might have, please feel free to ask me. Take care now. Bye bye.